Hi and welcome to another gaming video, and in today's video I want to talk about game case sizes in relation to the media that's inside them, so the cartridge or the disc or whatever it is that is inside the case. And I've got a big stack of games from various different systems here, so we'll wind it back a little bit and let's have a look at. So these are Wii and PlayStation 2 and GameCube games. Don't have anything much older than that. If you take a PS2 game, so you got this big old PlayStation 2 disc, a space for a memory card, and some thick booklets. So in relation to the size of the case itself, there's not much wasted space in there. That's pretty much packed inside there, and it's the same for things like the Wii, because you have a nice big disc for the Wii and some booklets. So that's that. Then if you take the GameCube, and the GameCube takes smaller discs, so you've got this little tiny disc in this corner here, really thick booklet on this Spider-Man game, and a space for a memory card down here. So not too much wasted space. Then if we move across to things like, what have I got here? Well, this is an Xbox 360. So it's similar to, well, it's the same size as a cube. It's a regular DVD size case. And the same again, disc, booklet, not much wasted space. Move up a generation, so you've got Xbox One and PS4. Cases are slightly smaller, so they're a bit shorter. And the same again, in fact there's very little wasted space in there. Disc, which, because the case is smaller, really doesn't have a lot of room around it, and space for a booklet in here. Although when you start getting into Xbox One and PS4, you'll find less and less booklets. I don't know if that's an environmental thing or, you know, just stop wasting paper. But I had to go through about 5 PS4 games before I found anything in this section, and they're not really booklets these days. This one is, oh, it's like a bonus DLC leaflet, and this is just your registration card. So no thick booklets like we had in, well, in the PS2 days, when you got booklets that were thick, and even that's not thick. The Spider-Man one in the GameCube one is huge. So moving up a generation to something like the PS4 and the Xbox One, we found less media inside. But my main focus for this video is portable consoles, and consoles that moved away from the discs. So these are a collection of my portable games. The PSP, I couldn't find any PSP games. I don't own any other than this demo disc, but I know that it wasn't much taller than the Vita. It was probably about that tall. So by the time you've got those thin booklets in and one of these UMD discs, there wasn't a huge amount of wasted space, unless there was no booklet in there and then it was just a disc in a box. But if we take a look at this sort of selection, these are all, well, they're all fairly modern, and they all run off tiny little cartridges. So the oldest one I've got here is the DS. Now this is the DS browser. This is a slight exception to DS games, because you open it up and you've got this huge great box for this tiny little cartridge, and it really is really thin, and just a rather large box for such a small game. With this one you do get an awful lot of booklets, so I can kind of excuse that one. And in particular with this one, there is a spot for the expansion pack, but you don't generally get that in DS games. So the whole of this side would be just for the game cartridge, and it just seemed like, well, it's a waste of space. Yes, they're a lot smaller, well, a lot shorter than PS4, and even shorter than regular sort of DVD sized cases, but it's still quite a lot of plastic for a tiny little cartridge inside. Go to the 3DS, a little bit thinner 3DS games are than regular DS cartridge boxes. And you open that up, and once again, this little tiny cartridge, so this whole space, and this side is just used for the cartridge. A few booklets, but then again I had to go through my 3DS collection to find any game really with a lot of booklets, and most of the time it was just an information thing. This is the booklet for Super Smash Bros. So a very small leaflet with just your instructions on how to use it, and another one for the 3DS itself. Well, with a little bit of a... Actually, that's a very weird one, because it says software instructions on there, and then that's the wrong way up, so you got to turn it that way. Everything on the inside, nope, all of the game selection on the inside is that way up, but that one is that way up. Anyway, that's just a little bit of leafleting inside that box, and that takes up the whole of that side, so it's not too bad. But my two big bugbears are these two platforms. So you've got the PS Vita and the Nintendo Switch. Now, I've got about 15 Switch games, and the only one I could find with any kind of leafleting is this one. This is Little Nightmares, and the leaflet that came with it is just a booklet on that. So really there's nothing in it, some merchandise. So most of my Switch games look like this, and I'm assuming most people's Switch games look like this. This tiny little cartridge sitting in the bottom here, sitting in the bottom here, and this whole wasted space. Now I know they're a lot thinner. They're a lot thinner than the 3DS, and they are quite a bit thinner than like a PS4 game. But it's still, it's a waste of space, I think. So if we put this up to, let's put this up to a regular PS2 game. So, yes, they're thinner. Yes, they're shorter. And yes, they are quite a bit smaller. But there's still all this packaging for this. And I just don't see why. The Vita is probably the best example of packaging done well, because out of all of these are the smallest boxes. So you've got, well, compare it to a Switch box, it's about the same thickness, probably a little bit thicker, but even shorter than a Switch case. Actually, I didn't realise that they were the same width, but they're a lot shorter, way shorter and thinner than the 3DS games, as you can see. And inside you've got this Vita cartridge stuck in the middle, still a lot of wasted space all the way around it, and I had to look through to find any of my Vita games with booklets in. So this is the Little Big Planet booklet. It appears that my Little Big Planet is not English. I think this is a Swedish version, because there's no English on the box itself and there's no English on the booklet. But normally you would have there's a network pass information, and that's about it. That is the only Vita game I've got that I could find any booklet in. Now I know that they have veered away from putting lots of thick books in games, whether that's because of environmental issues, or whether it's because games are a lot easier, or they just expect you to look that information up online. But in terms of game cases, this is quite small, but there's still a fair amount of wasted space. Without a booklet in there, that is the only thing that this box holds. And I think, I do like game cases, don't get me wrong, but I think if we carry on with this, and maybe with the Switch 2 coming out, or whatever new cartridge-based system comes out, we could end up with boxes that are a quarter of this size, just little tiny, well, similar to this really, this sort of size. I don't want to have to go down the whole cardboard route and your cartridge just falls out of it. I do like the fact that they're all clipped in and safe, but we're getting smaller and smaller, and there's less and less inside the boxes themselves, and that is some of the reason why the cases have got smaller, but I think they still waste a lot of space inside them. There's no reason why the Switch boxes couldn't have been that high. I mean, this side on a Switch case is completely wasted. There's no booklet tabs here, they're all on this side. So I'm not really sure what the point of this video is, just to point out that older games like the Wii and the Cube, they could get away with having cases this size because it took up pretty much the whole of the inside. You go a bit further back and things like the Mega Drive, they were very thick. They were sort of almost that sort of thickness to two of these sort of games thick. But there was a reason for that. The cartridges were bulky. You tend to get quite a lot of booklets in games like that. Same with the Super Nintendo. Then when we moved on, we were having thinner media, less booklets. It took a little while before things like the PS4 and the Xbox started to sort of slim down case sizes. Then, like I say, you move to like the DS and the 3DS, and they got even shorter. The Switch then decided to take that and just change the orientation, and then you get the Vita, which I think is quite possibly the smallest game case I've seen. That is it. That is me really just sort of talking through how older games like these and the Mega Drive, etc., could justify having such large cases. And if we're talking about sort of environmental issues, these are regular DVD size cases. There are millions of these floating around for various different platforms, and not just gaming platforms, films, etc. When you got to like the PS3 and the PS4, they start to use their own cases, so these wouldn't be any good for DVDs. They're just for Xbox One or Xbox One S, I think, use a similar style case. And PS4, I don't recall what size the PS5 uses, but I think it's roughly the same size. So these are sort of custom made for these platforms. Same with the DS and the 3DS, but they're getting smaller and smaller. The Switch ones, I do like them. They look kind of almost book-like when you sit lots of them on a shelf. You've got this nice row of book-looking games, and they've tried to make it thin and they've tried to shorten it, but there's still a lot of wasted space in there, especially for games with no booklets. So the Vita probably comes out on top for trying to waste as little space inside as possible. But even with the Vita, you could probably have taken that down to about there. Little tiny booklet, cartridge down here, and but I do like these. These are very cute. So there you go. A quick look through a few generations of games and how the media inside them has changed. And when I say media, I mean the paperwork and the format of whatever the game is on, and how it's changed and gotten smaller. We're getting less and less paperwork inside. Most games these days have none at all. So there you go. If you've got a system there that maybe I haven't seen, that's got quite small cases and utilises most of the space inside, then let me know. But these are probably the two clear winners, with this beating it quite a lot. So there you go. Link, like, subscribe, enjoy.